Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hope you're having another good day. We've got another video reaction segment coming to you today. This video suggested to us by none other than our boy, Mr. Frizz. So today's video, Multiversus, is yet another dying live service, and the player count has dropped by over 99%. So like many of you guys, myself included, had the game release, was super excited about it, played it on release, and after about 3 weeks, maybe a month, probably have not gone back to it or played it since. That's how it is for me. I assume that many of you are the same way. It was fun, but to grind through the game and just, it's very repetitive to play that over and over again every day. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and hop into this video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
In a video from a few days ago, I talked about the current state of live services and how many of them are dying off due to the unsustainable nature of the live service oversaturation that expects players will have infinite time and that expects that there'll be infinite players, but in reality, there are a limited number of players with a limited number of time. And live services, given the amount of time that they demand from players with how grindy they are, just, you know, there's only so many of them that can coexist before the whole genre starts collapsing, and only a few established ones remain. And so we've been seeing live services die off left and right. I listed a number of them in that video, and these are live services that died within the span of weeks. I'm talking about games like Marvel's Avengers, Apex Legends Mobile, Battlefield Mobile, Project Q, Crossfire X, Back for Blood, Knockout City, Rumbleverse, Crime Side, Echo VR, Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dia, Heroes Bonds, Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier, Babylon's Fall, Dragalia Lost.
I unfortunately don't play VR games at the moment. One day I do hope to get into it. I just
all
don't
within the span of weeks. There's definitely been a reckoning for live services, and one that may potentially be joining that group if it doesn't find a way to spruce things up is Multiversus. This is a game that is essentially Super Smash Brothers, but with Warner Brothers properties, and so the roster looks something like this. It's a pretty fun roster, and when it launched, a lot of people play this game because, you know, they like the roster, and there were foundational elements of the game that really worked. There were aspects of the fighting mechanics that really resonated with people, but it still had a lot of work left to do.
Each character
it just didn't have the depth and breadth of content, and content rollout has been slow, which hasn't helped matters. Given the general bare bones state that it released, and despite a solid foundation, it just had an uphill climb to make.
And that's hard.
Well, the Metascore right now, while the Metascore itself is, you know, in a decent place, the user score is sort of mixed, positive leaning, but people acknowledge the issues surrounding just the lack of content and the fact that there were certain refinements that needed to happen. Unfortunately, the updates and the fixes and character additions and content additions, that stuff just hasn't been rolling out at a pace that is adequate, which is why
they're up against games
Steam
like
charts right now and take a look at Multiversus's performance. You'll see that
Smash
numbers are looking extremely
Mortal Kombat,
rough right
Tekken,
now.
games that have been around
this is a game
forever.
that launched to high enough players that we delved into the hundreds of thousands when it comes to concurrent players all-time peak, 153,000 all-time peak concurrent players back in July of 2022. And you can see that average players were in the tens of thousands, but that very quickly plummeted into the lower tens of thousands and then into the low thousands.
That's a
before
huge jump
got
after the
into
first
triple digits, into the hundreds of players. And now you can see right here that the 24-hour peak is sitting at 1,091 players. And as of 24 minutes ago, just a couple hundred players have been playing. This is a far cry from the launch numbers. We're talking about an over 99% drop in players, almost 100% straight up. And this is something that various news outlets have picked up on, including Video Games Chronicle, with an article whose headline reads, Multiversus's daily peak Steam player count has dropped more than 99% since launch. The game dropped below a daily peak of 1,000 players for the first time this week, and this is an article that was published on February 15th, 2023. They actually did the math and provided the exact percentage by which the player base dropped from its peak. This marks a drop in daily peak player count of 99.357% in less than 7 months. Keep in mind that this isn't like Super Smash Brothers where you buy the game and that's that. Smash Brothers was a game you bought at full price and released expansions here and there when it comes to character additions, but ultimately it is very much its own self-contained game that doesn't rely on the live service model, that doesn't need to recurrently monetize constantly for it to be viable. Once the game is sold at that full price, you know, a sale has been made, money has been made, and the recurrent monetization aspect isn't as important for Super Smash Brothers, whereas this Multiversus is a free-to-play live service that's relying on players engaging with the game and spending money on microtransactions to make its money back. And so seeing numbers dip from an all-time peak of 153,000 players and an average daily players count of over 66,000 players,
which is
all the way down to
insane.
triple digits.
So like this year it hasn't even had
concerning.
a peak
Those are
player
critically low player numbers for a live service, a genre that relies on the player base, whose lifeblood is the number of players. And at a certain point, when you cross a certain line of how few players there are, the live service itself just becomes not viable because players can't find matches. They'll have trouble finding people to play with. And on top of that, the game just cannot make enough money. And Video Games Chronicle here does an apt job of explaining exactly why player numbers have dropped so significantly. Part of the reason for the drop in players may be a tepid response to the game's Season 2 content. The first season went super well, saw the release of 5 new characters, Rick, Morty, Gizmo, Stripe, and Black Adam, over the course of around 2 months between late August and late October. But then the second season is where things took a turn for the worse. Season 2 started on November 15th, and since the start of that season, just one character has released, Marvin the Martian, and that was nearly 3 months ago as of the publishing of this February 15th, 2023 article. And it seems as though that's the only character that's going to release for Season 2, a stark contrast from the 5 characters that released in Season 1, which goes to suggest that content rollout is really slowing down, that the developers just aren't able to keep up with the pace of the seasons, and that's just not a good sign. And then to make optics far worse, Season 3 was delayed significantly. It was supposed to start yesterday, February 14th, 2023, as of the publishing of this article, but developer Player First Games delayed it to March 31st. You can see right here the announcement made by Multiversus' Twitter page. We heard you, MVPs, to help you reach the end of the current Battle Pass. Players get Battle Pass XP boost items, plus Season 2 is extended to March 31st, and that hit a nerve with people. You can see right here scrolling down, people saying March 31st, they're about to drop an April Fool's the day after too. Nah, this is insanely disappointing news. Please tell us we don't have to wait that long for more content. Please tell us something is coming during Season 2, which has been starved.
That is
for
insane.
Content.
Just
the silence is killing the
is
community. That's another thing.
Season.
Communication has not been great. No updates are being provided, so it's just hard to be patient. And you can see right here scrolling down that the comments are pretty much all in that vein. They all echo general sentiments that this is just not acceptable. As Video Games Chronicle put it, this has been met with widespread condemnation by players, and you can see that it's right around that time in November when the player base started to drop into the low thousands, though even before then you can see the player base had been dropping into the thousands. It just goes to suggest that the substance of the game just wasn't reinforced enough by the developers, and people eventually just lost interest.
Either way, still
because
a lot
there's
of people
so many
are
live
playing
services
2 months
out there,
after.
and only so many of them can retain so much attention. Again, there's a limited number of players with a limited number of time, and unless your live service stands out in a really major way and is able to compete with what's established right now, the big live services that have been there for years and that kind of set the groundwork, unless your content rollout is consistent, unless the quality is genuinely high, and unless you just find a way to stick out in what is very much an oversaturated market that is going to be unsustainable in the long term, your live service is bound to die. And it seems as though Multiversus, unless it really pulls a fast one on us and just does something major to rekindle the fire that has been lost surrounding this game, it is going to very much end up joining the dozens of live services that I just pointed out. The ones that I covered in this video titled Live Services Are Dying by the Dozen, which is exactly what's happening. The live service bubble is bursting. It doesn't help that the microtransactions people find to be kind of egregious. The monetization system locks off many of its character skins to premium currency. And look, it is a free-to-play game. It has to make its money back somehow. So there's some leniency on microtransactions. But certain skins, like just essentially a gold Superman costing $15, just the pricing versus the quality of skins ratio is not particularly great. And that's on top of Battle Pass and all of these different elements. It's just stuff that people don't want to buy at that price point, and especially when the game's content rollout isn't enough to maintain their attention for them to make players feel invested for the long term. So players are not going to want to invest in something that they feel isn't going to last, and it's a very bad sign for a game.
I don't understand why they don't just sell skins for like
needs players to keep playing, to keep.
I mean, you gotta think, if you sell them at $5, think how many people would buy a $5 skin
that is able to cover the cost.
If it's a really good skin for $5,
and it's not just on PC. We're seeing these huge drops in player numbers. True Achievements, which runs its own Xbox gameplay chart taken by analyzing a pool of over 2 million Xbox player accounts, says the game's active player count has dropped to around 4% of what it was at launch, well outside the top 100 games played on Xbox, despite being essentially a free-to-play Smash Brothers with well-known Warner Brothers characters. That's not the most statistically accurate data per se, but it very much goes in line with what we're seeing in terms of the player base dipping on PC, on Steam, and just a huge percentage that's been lost here. And you can see what a stark contrast this is to a similar live service,
New World's
Brawlhalla,
a
which is a free-to-play Smash Brothers like that occasionally brings in characters from other IPs. You can see that this is a game that's been out since back in 2014, and slowly but surely it's built up its player numbers, and you can see that it's been a constant increase. It's been relatively stable, and its numbers have only been going up. There has been a recent dip, but it's still bringing in, you know, over 10,000 players every day.
I mean, it looks
not
like
too far off from its all-time peak. It's just a night and day difference. Brawlhalla has established itself as a long-term IP, as a long-term live service, even though Brawlhalla is not necessarily the more popular IP in the sense that it doesn't have the more iconic characters that Multiversus does. But eventually Brawlhalla got into a rhythm, and it's been consistent about its content releases, about its updates, about
huge.
The way it handles its
live
that's
something
service.
We all
and
care
so
about
it's established itself.
In games like that.
And as long as they keep that ball going, it's possible for this live service to survive. Whereas Multiversus has failed to stand out in an oversaturated market, failed to retain people's interest because of the way it's been poorly handling both communication and consistent high-quality content rollout. And so in the same way that the Avengers name couldn't carry Marvel's Avengers' poor, boring gameplay and design,
I heard
just
that game
implementation
did not
of
turn
live
out very
service,
well.
these
I never tried
major names, these incredibly well-known and iconic characters aren't able to carry Multiverses because the foundation just hasn't been built upon in a compelling way. It's not enough anymore to do the bare minimum for a live service to keep it alive. You have to go above and beyond to compete against the established live services that have grounded their roots on this genre that is becoming more and more competitive and less viable as more live services saturate a market that expects players to have infinite time and that expects there to be infinite players, which is just an unsustainable model. We'll see what the future holds. I'm not saying this is the end for Multiversus, but Season 3 really has to be a knockout. The lineup of characters has to be compelling and extensive, and the rollout of those characters and the rollout of new stages, new content in general just has to be at the top of their game, and again, has to go above and beyond. They can't go mid with this, especially in this critical moment where the player base has dipped so much that it is very much in it might die off stages. But I suppose only time will tell what the future holds for Multiversus. It'd be a shame to see this game go down in flames because, again, the character lineup that can exist within this universe and just the foundation of the gameplay, you know, there's potential for this game to achieve greatness, but when you're not able to keep up with your own schedule, with your, you know, seasons and all these things, and with the player's patience, then, yeah, you're going to get a losing live service that is just going to drive players away. It's
we'll have to see how it turns out.
Very limited time on just more established, better run live services. But we'll see what happens until we find out more about the fate of Multiversus and until we find out more about what its future plans are. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this game.
I enjoyed that.
Did you play it? And if you're one...
Did you guys play it? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to see it continued into the future and still be around and still be a viable game that you can go play and enjoy? You guys let me know what you think. I enjoyed it. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to stop back in and play it sometime. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that is all for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for me. It means a lot. It helps support me, help me grow. And that's all for this one. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.